What if I told you that university was a Christian invention? It's hard to imagine now, but for most of history, faith and education were inseparable. But that's a part of the story we don't hear anymore. Because today, these same universities that used to be Christian institutions produce some of the least religious graduates in history. So what changed? How did a place once built to strengthen faith somehow become a place where many people seem to lose it? So I dropped out of university in my first year, but while I was there, I started noticing something about the culture, especially at my uni. There was a strong emphasis on certain social values and ways of thinking that were openly encouraged and celebrated. And I want to be clear, being welcoming and diverse is a good thing. That is not the issue. But it was clear that some beliefs were more emphasized than others. And that's when I started to realize universities aren't really neutral when it comes to belief. They've shifted from Christian values to secular ones, and you can really feel that on campus. So who am I here with?
Alexander.
My name is Anthony Bouchine.
I'm Justin Speranza.
My name is Ryan Galliot. I'm the head of the Catholic chaplaincy here at UTS.
My name is Will, the president of the UTS Catholic Society.
You're here with Benson.
You're here with Isabella.
In one word, how are you describing a Christian at university?
Being a Christian at university, it's very intellectually challenging.
Eye-opening.
Isolating. A blessing.
Fulfilling.
Interesting.
Roller coaster.
These words show just how different the experience can be for students of faith today. But to really understand why, we need to go back to the beginning and see how universities actually started. University, as we know it in the Western world, actually began in medieval Christian Europe, at a time when faith shaped how people understood the world. The first universities grew out of cathedral and monastic schools. Places like Bologna, Paris, and Oxford were among the earliest, and they became the model for what we now call a university. Many of the early teachers were clergy, such as priests, monks, and theologians. Theology was actually considered the highest field of study because understanding God was seen as key to understanding everything else. Other subjects like law, medicine, and philosophy were also taught, but even they were understood and taught through a Christian way of thinking. Universities weren't mainly focused on careers the way they are today. Their deeper goal was to form people who could serve both the church and society, shaping character and devotion as much as intellect. But over time, that original purpose began to shift, and that's where the story gets interesting. So last week I went to a university here in Sydney, a secular one, basically to find Christian students I could interview for this video. And honestly, going into it, I didn't think it would be easy, and it wasn't, but God provided as always, and I did end up meeting a few people from the Catholic Society at the uni, who you saw earlier. Anyway, as I was walking around campus, I started noticing all the pride flags everywhere, and it just made me realize how hard it is to actually picture a time when universities were completely centered on faith. Because walking around, you just don't feel that anymore. Like, yes, faith isn't gone on campus, but it's definitely not the foundation it once was. And that shift didn't just happen out of nowhere. Because around the 18th and 19th centuries, the role of universities began to change. As modern governments became more involved in education, universities slowly expanded their focus beyond serving the church and started emphasizing research, science, careers, and national progress. At the same time, Enlightenment ideas were spreading across Europe. Reason, science, and individual thinking were becoming more important, and knowledge wasn't understood as being grounded mainly in theology anymore. Now, religion didn't just disappear overnight, but it did become less central to how universities understood their purpose. Less about forming faith and character and more about producing workers, experts, and professionals. So Christianity went from shaping the entire university to influencing just parts of it to, in many places, becoming something more personal than institutional. And the numbers show just how dramatic that change has been. So religious identity among college students has been falling quite steadily for decades. For example, in the 1960s, over 80% of incoming college students identified with a religion. But by 2023, that number had dropped to below 50%. Meanwhile, students identifying as atheist or agnostic have jumped from under 5% in the 60s to over 17% in 2023. In medieval Europe, nearly every Christian university founded before the year 1500 had a Christian purpose. But today, that picture looks very different. In the United States, which has one of the largest higher education systems in the world, only about 1 in 5 colleges and universities has a religious affiliation. And globally, Christian universities are rare in nearly every country. In most countries, less than 15% of students actually go to one. So the historical changes explain a lot, but in the last few decades, there have been some big cultural shifts that challenge traditional Christian Christian beliefs and pushed universities even further towards secularism. Some examples include the sexual revolution in the 1960s, which changed how people thought about relationships and morality. Postmodernism challenged traditional ideas of truth and authority, and the rise of new atheism in the 2000s made it more common to openly question or criticize religion, even in academic spaces. So when you put all of this together, the historical changes plus these modern cultural shifts, it's pretty clear why universities today are very different from what they once were. It's no secret universities have become more and more secular throughout the years, and naturally that has shaped the environment students now walk into. So what has your experience been like as a Christian at university?
When I was in undergrad, I guess I had a huge compassion for people, and which I still do, but that did kind of lead to a lot of situations. I did protest a lot. I did get involved in a lot of situations that got me in trouble. I did get involved with certain communities that I might have thought twice now. I feel like I was just kind of figuring out who I am, and that with so many different opinions, so many different types of people with different experiences, really kind of led me to be influenced in the wrong and right ways.
When you're constantly surrounded by new ideas, different worldviews, different beliefs, your faith is going to be tested in some way. I know that because I've also felt it myself. It's not always that your beliefs are directly attacked, but when you're in spaces that often promote worldviews completely different from your own, you can start questioning what you believe and why you believe it. And I think that tension is something a lot of Christian students experience, even if they don't always say it out loud. Have you ever felt out of place because of your faith?
Not really. Slightly. I have.
Yes.
100%.
To date, I haven't had any issues from other people when I publicly or, show my faith.
Generally, everyone's very welcoming.
I've had friends that I met at uni where I've explained to them, hey, I'm a Catholic, I practice my faith. They've seemed to see eye to eye with me, we haven't had much argument, so I think mainly the people that I met at uni have been accepting of it, so I haven't been seen as being out of touch with it, so I think it's been more accepting.
But for others, the experience looked a bit different.
I definitely felt out of place. I felt like it was something that shouldn't be spoken about. It's kind of controversial, especially in this day and age with, I guess, polarizing views.
I remember having our orientation day last year and just walking through the whole political, aisle, like a lot of socialism and progressives and LGBTQ. You feel a bit like isolated because it's like, these guys don't understand necessarily life and the world the way that I do. Sometimes you feel as though other people look down on you because they think you're self-righteous or because you're a Catholic or a Christian.
I mean, I think we all do when you're living faith. People come at you with assumptions, but we're called to stand up for Christ. So, it means even in the uncomfortable moments.
Obviously, there are still plenty of students that believe and care about the faith deeply, but the atmosphere is just very different now, and I think that's something students of faith often have to navigate.
A psychology course essay written by an OU student is in the spotlight after the student received a 0.
Samantha Fulnecki is a psychology junior who says she received a 0 grade for citing the Bible in her opinion-based essay on gender binary labels.
Samantha says that she's been receiving hate comments on social media for citing God as a source in her essay.
I didn't know that the TA was transgender or about his personal beliefs or anything like that. I just did the assignments and turned them in and went about my day. So there hadn't been any tension in the past until we were asked to do an assignment over this topic.
The graduate teaching assistant grading it called it offensive and said it lacked empirical evidence.
So if you haven't seen this controversy, it actually happened very recently in November 2025. Basically, a psychology student got a failing grade on an essay that cited the Bible to disagree with the idea of multiple genders. I'm not going to go too deep into it because obviously this one incident doesn't tell the whole story, but it is such a clear example of how faith-based perspectives can clash with the way certain ideas are treated on campus today.
Yeah, so when I was in uni, I've dropped out now, but when I was in uni, I had a class, I think it was Culture and Diversity. Our tutor basically made the class put swear words on the board. I think the activity was something to do with like writing up derogatory terms that are commonly used for men and women. And obviously I didn't participate, but that same tutor, I think if I remember correctly, was just trying to indoctrinate the class. Oh yeah, and I also remember him talking about how we as Catholics are against abortion, and he was kind of criticizing that.
My first lecture was in law, or something about IVF, and everyone was supporting the law, and I was the only one against it, and it was really hard to defend. 1 verse 30, including the professor.
In class, you could tell the tutor was very progressive and was going in a certain philosophy. And it was challenging because the way that they viewed the philosophy wasn't necessarily the truth, but it was clearly just like an idea that was possible. A bit hard to want to try in that subject because you feel like it's based upon something that's theoretical and not actually practical.
Honestly, situations like these aren't that shocking when you think about it, because in many classrooms today, biblical or faith-based beliefs are in the minority. And even among faculty, studies have shown that professors tend to lean more politically progressive overall. And I think these challenges are a major reason for the biggest shift we're starting to see now. While secular universities do dominate, faith-based institutions haven't disappeared, and in fact, some are actually seeing real growth. It might seem surprising, especially considering how expensive many of these schools are compared to public colleges or universities, but clearly there's a growing number of students who want to be in communities where faith is more central. In the US, 30 evangelical colleges reported noticeable enrollment increases in 2024, and for many of them, it's been building over the past decade. For example, Colorado Christian University recorded its largest enrollment ever in 2025 with over 17,400 students, which is actually double its size over the past 10 years. Evangel University also set an all-time enrollment record in 2025 with 2,741 students, which actually marked their 5th straight year of growth and nearly 30% growth since 2021. So yeah, overall religious identity among students might be declining, but at the same time, something else is clearly happening. And that kind of begs the question, if fewer students are identifying as religious overall, why are some Christians choosing God even more during university? And what's keeping their faith? Did university make your faith stronger, weaker, or did it stay the same?
When I first started uni, it made my faith weaker. I got entangled with a lot of secular things.
I feel like in some senses it did make it slightly stronger because I had Alex, my friend from high school, reach out to me and offer me to join the UTS Catholic Society, and that's really given me a new avenue to express my faith. But there have been times where it's just stayed the same because there's not many Christian societies or committees here at the uni that really do outreach or offer much activities.
It probably made it stronger. When you're at university, you're supposed to at least be more critical thinking. So then because of that, you start questioning things. The truth is supposed to present itself more. So what I've found is after I question things, I start reading St. Thomas Aquinas and the saints, my faith actually gets stronger, it doesn't get weaker. And being at university, and since I've left school, I've actually had the opportunity to meet a lot more Catholics who actually care about their faith.
The university itself hasn't really helped me develop in my faith, but what has helped me develop in my faith was the Catholic chaplaincy that has really impacted my faith formation.
I was blessed enough to actually study theology and philosophy, so my faith only got stronger, and it wasn't really an issue at all with my classmates, and people tend to just accept it, so that's pretty cool.
I feel like I've had a really interesting journey in terms of my faith at uni. I started cradle Catholic, absolutely knowing not much about my faith, and I feel like when I went to uni, that wasn't really enhanced at all. It wasn't until postgrad, after I already kind of had a journey back to my faith, that I started kind of seeing faith on campus, going to the chapel and everything, but before that it was a very different situation.
A common pattern I noticed is that many of the students that said their faith got stronger intentionally surrounded themselves with other believers, and that's interesting because it shows that even in a largely secular environment, students can still grow in their faith, especially when they actively seek out people and spaces that support it. And that's why when I asked them, what advice would you give a Christian starting uni? A lot of them actually said the same thing.
Find a good community, because your time in university can make or break how you live your faith in the future.
Come to the Catholic chaplaincy. That's about it, because we'll help you form your faith and help you to be the way you need to be for the rest of your life.
A Christian starting uni, the best thing that you should do at the moment would be to connect with other Catholics. If you are alone, it's a lot harder to be holy.
Find a friend group or, a society or an apostolate that really lets you live out your Christian values. Find a group of friends who can also support you so you guys can grow in faith together and go to church.
Be open, be bold when it comes to your decisions at uni. Do outreach, even coming to see the Catholic Society.
One advice would be to be rooted in what you know about your church. Just know exactly what the church teachings are. Not every church teaching, but a rough guideline of what's right and what's wrong.
Definitely don't compromise your faith for the people that you meet at uni. Don't hide who you really are, and if you do feel like there is a time where you're actually compromising your beliefs or like going with the flow, I think definitely think twice before you go ahead.
And honestly, that might also explain why some Christian colleges are seeing growth, because in those places, that kind of faith community is already built into campus life. And I think that's something a lot of students are really looking for. And thinking about all of this, it actually led me to one final thought. Ironically, I don't think universities becoming less Christian is entirely a bad thing, because as Christianity becomes less institutional and more personal, we're starting to see more young people choose Jesus for themselves instead of it just being something they grew up around or feel expected to follow. And when faith becomes a real choice, it stops being just tradition and starts becoming a genuine relationship with God. Now, I'm gonna end the video with one piece of scripture. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." As believers, we're called to stand firm in our faith and live differently from the world around us, and that especially includes secular places like college or university. You don't always have to go around preaching. Sometimes it's simply about being set apart in Christ and reflecting Him through the way you live. You know, just being a light in places that might feel dark, because ultimately that's what we're called to do. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!